So in the same amount of time that I have to sum up this entire debate, Jacob Zuma spent simply dodging around questions from MPs in Parliament. That's what we don't like. That's why we like the idea to dissent. That's why we don't like the police getting involved and suppressing ideas. So we went further than proving than proving that the police are incompetent. So we saw they couldn't prove that that the police were the only body that could get involved. We went further by proving that the police were actually incompetent. We went further by proving that a robust debate is important. That's true functioning of Parliament. We went further to prove that legislation doesn't prevent everything and that people can still act subjectively. They didn't actually prove their burden when it came to showing more effectiveness. We don't think riot gear coming into Parliament and fighting about riot gear for the next 3 weeks is actually an effective use of Parliament's time. So we don't think it's effective management of Parliament. We think that when the EFF stood up, they engaged. They decided to actually get involved, knowing that there would be consequences. I mean, there's TV in Parliament, so of course they're not going to be hurting anyone. So we don't think that calling in the police was even necessary. So we think that the police can't actually give an objective decision. They can't decide, they can't play that role, because they're foot soldiers. They're foot soldiers designed to be shields in Parliament. That's not a good thing, because it means that they can simply be controlled by an impartial speaker. We don't even think that if they could be directed by a partial speaker, it's a good thing. We don't like to give control over to someone who could be impartial. So we say that the Sergeant of Arms can still cite rules. The Sergeant of Arms is still accountable to the main Parliament. So it was an assumption on their side to say that the Sergeant of Arms couldn't handle it on the 21st. We think that she could. It was up to Mbete who decided to call the police. She decided. So it was a false decision on her part. It was a subjective decision on her part, a biased one. So we think that Sergeant of Arms could have done something because the EFF was simply standing up and making a noise. We tell you that they have to choose between either having rules or true accountability, where the EFF can actually stand up and point to Jacob Zuma and say, you're not answering the question. We think that's incredibly important in South Africa to actually make sure that people are being held accountable. We tell you when it comes to dissent that it's important because it can highlight issues and actually highlight flaws in the system. So instead of government steamrolling, now these smaller parties don't have to actually take the back bench. They don't have to sit down. They can stand up and show the ANC or show any government of the day that they're actually doing something wrong. We don't think that somehow they brought up that interaction with the people is actually important beyond actually communicating with your MP. So we don't think that somehow having an effective management of Parliament comes about with the police and actually promotes interaction with the people. We don't see how that works. We tell you it's the only option by the end for the EFF or any party to dissent because of impartial rulings. So we tell you that's where the chaos came in. If we remove that, we now restore the Sergeant at Arms' ability to actually control, assuming that she couldn't control on the day. We tell you that furthermore and lastly, that when you bring in the police, you're pandering to the EFF's needs, you're pandering to their whim, because now they get the attention. Now they get to say, well, we're the victims. So when you bring the police into it, now they're encouraging them. So we